my experience tripping on psilocybin mushrooms. Stay tuned. Before I dive into the story, I'm going to give a disclaimer. By no means is this video advocating for drug use or promoting the use of drugs, okay? I am not someone who is a drug user, guys. I am someone who maintains sobriety as long as I can. I'm a person who advocates for sobriety and is a sober person. Although I have, in my life, dabbled a little bit in marijuana, and I've drank a little bit, but I am not an avid or an active drug user by any means, okay? I've had one experience in my life with psilocybin mushrooms or psychedelic mushrooms or magic mushrooms, whatever you want to call them. And it was a very life-changing, a very beautiful experience, and that's what this video is for. This video is purely for entertainment and educational purposes only, all right? So, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into my experience and my story on magic mushrooms. So, first of all, I've always been, ever since I can remember, for as long as I can remember, ever since I was like a child, I've always been a very, very curious person. Like, curious about the world, curious about the universe, curious about spirituality, curious about the afterlife, curious about myself, who I am. I've always been someone who has like a spiritual kind of yearning for understanding and that sort of thing and wisdom. And I've always been like a truth seeker. I've always been a wisdom seeker and that sort of thing for as long as I can remember. And when I was growing up, drugs were never even a part of my life at all. They never have been. And so, you know, with that in mind, I've always been someone who was very materialistic, like not in like a superficial way, but my worldview was very much so material world. Like just this material world is like all that exists. It's all I can perceive, you know what I mean? I went through a brief period in my life where I was like an atheist for a while. I'm not anymore, and I never truly was, but when I was like a preteen and like a teenager a little bit, I kind of went through this like edgy sort of like, oh, I'm an atheist phase or whatever, and that sort of stuff. So I say that to say that while I did always have like a spiritual yearning, I did go through a short phase in my life where I kind of fell away from God and fell away from religion and spirituality and all that kind of stuff. And so that when I graduated from college, okay, this story takes place right after I graduated from college, so like around 2021, 2022-ish time period. So not too long ago. I mean, a few years ago, but not super long ago. And so I had just graduated from college. I had just gotten my first job in my field. I had just moved in with this guy who was my roommate. It was my first time moving out on my own. I lived with my parents all throughout college, and so I was free. You know what I mean? I kind of had this mindset, like I'm totally free to kind of do what I want now. I have a job, of course, and I have some responsibilities and that sort of thing, but otherwise I'm pretty much free. And so I happened to know a guy who had done psychedelic or psilocybin mushrooms before, and he happened to have some, okay, and this was someone who I associated with during this time. We're no longer friends. It has nothing to do with this story, but we're no longer friends now. But nonetheless, I reached out to him and I was like, hey, you know, I'm curious about doing a psychedelic trip for the first time. I've heard a lot about it. I watched a lot of videos on YouTube, a lot about people talking about their stories and how amazing it was and how life-changing it was. And I watched a lot of like Joe Rogan podcasts and all this kind of shit. Joe Rogan is like known for talking about DMT all the time and stuff like that. And I used to listen to a lot of things like that, like when I was in college, and I found it interesting. And so I was just like, you know what? Let me try this for myself. You know what I mean? I want to try this for myself because I'm curious. You know what I mean? I'm a curious person. I'm an open-minded person. I'm a truth-seeking individual, and from the stories that I saw online, apparently when you do a psychedelic trip, it kind of reveals like the truth to you, or truths to you. It reveals spiritual truths. And so, again, that always piqued my interest. And so, long story short, I got the mushrooms from this guy, okay? And these were real, authentic psilocybin, psychedelic mushrooms. It was the actual mushrooms themselves. It was not like a gummy. It was not like some kind of drink. It was the legit, organic, from the earth mushrooms, okay? And he gave them to me in like a Ziploc bag. And so my plan was to go to a friend's house so he could trip sit me while I do this in like a controlled environment. I just did it at my friend's house, okay? And I didn't know this at the time, but he actually ended up inviting like 10 people over, like while I was tripping. I didn't know that prior to going on this trip. So anyways, I agreed to go to this guy's house, and he was going to trip sit me, okay? This is not the person that sold me the mushrooms. This is another friend of mine who I had a closer relationship with and who I trusted more. So anyways, I show up to this guy's house. I think this was like a weekend or something. I show up to his house, and I had kind of planned like, hey, I kind of told him like, hey, I've got some psilocybin mushrooms. I want to trip. I've got 2 grams of them. I'm going to eat them all. And I want to see what this psychedelic trip stuff that everyone's talking about is all about. And so I show up to his house, and long story short, I eat all 2 grams of the mushrooms, okay? Now, these things are absolutely disgusting. I would not recommend you eat them just by themselves. I tried to eat like a bag of Doritos with them to kind of, get rid of the horrible taste or whatever. And now is where the actual trip experience starts. So sorry it took me so long to get here. But I ate the mushrooms, and I'm waiting about 30 to 45 minutes, and all of a sudden I start to feel this come up. And if for any of you guys that have ever done psychedelics, you know that the come up is incredibly anxiety inducing. It's not fun at all. It's very, very you're almost having like a panic attack, kind of. You're almost having like this anxiety panic attack because for whatever reason, psilocybin mushrooms or psychedelics in general kind of just do that to you. And so I'm on this come up. It's been about like 45 minutes to an hour at this point. I'm starting to come up, you know what I mean? I'm like, holy shit, like I'm anxious as hell. I can't even like focus for anything. And then once that come up kind of went away, was kind of over, then you start to feel much better. You're not as anxious. You're kind of just here in the moment. And I remember initially, the first thing I felt was there is this communication like from the spiritual realm, from the astral realm, from the kind of the spiritual world, and you don't know how it's communicating with you. It's not like words. It's not any kind of traditional communication style. It's just like, it's almost like telepathy or something. It gave me this sense of like just let go of control. You know what I mean? You don't have to control anything at all. The universe is in charge here. God is in charge here. You as your ego, you do not have to control anything. There's no reason for any of that kind of stuff. And it also told me how this realm, like this world, this reality, is pretty much just all about control and manipulation. You know what I mean? That's kind of all it's about. Or that's if you could sum up this world in like 2 words, it would be control and manipulation. So I kind of had that communication coming to me from the spiritual world. And I somehow I just knew it to be true. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh wow, holy shit, like this makes total sense. Like, wow, I really don't have to control anything. I can just let go, So there was definitely like that sort of sense after the come up. I could almost, I was looking at the floor, and the floor had like this weird kind of pattern on it. It was like some carpet, and I was looking at the floor, and it looked like the floor was like moving, right? It was like waves in the ocean, or like water flowing in like a river or something, but it was in real life, and it was like the floor that I was looking at. Okay. So I started to kind of feel like something was weird, something was strange, something was about to happen. I could very clearly tell like something serious is about to happen. And so that was the first thing I noticed was this, the floor was like moving and flowing like water. And after that, this is the part of the trip where you start to learn about yourself, like your ego, like you, where you fit in with the world and shit like that. And so apparently, one thing that it revealed to me was that I was abused as a child, which I know I was, but somehow my brain like blocked that out for many, many years, or like I forgot about that, or whatever, because when you go through traumatic things, especially as a child, oftentimes your brain will like block that out and you forget about it and you like remember it later when you're an adult and shit. So it made me remember something that happened to me as a child. I'm not going to go into what that was on YouTube, but it brought that memory back to me, and I immediately remembered, oh yeah, that did happen to me as a child, you know. But it wasn't like this. It wasn't like this. Oh, I feel bad for myself. Like, oh, poor me. It was like it was almost like a relief, like a revealing sort of thing. It was almost like a weight was lifted sort of thing. Like, yes, this happened to you as a child. And not only that, but look how it also showed me, look how many other people in the world throughout history have experienced the exact same trauma that you did as a kid. And it gave me this sense that like I was not alone. This sort of thing, this sort of trauma like happens to lots of people and has throughout history. And so I just had this sense like this is something that happened to you as a kid, and look how many other people that this has happened to. You're not alone. This is something that's very common that happens in the world, and that's just a part of what happens in this world. So if you guys ever do end up doing some kind of psychedelic drug, like I said, I am not advocating for it, but if you end up doing it, there is the possibility that it may bring up some like childhood trauma that you may have had in the past that you may have like forgotten about, or your memory has like been blocked from your brain. What began to happen was I began to have like what people describe as an ego death. I don't know if I think I did have like a full-on ego death, but I don't think it was as intense as a lot of people have. I only took 2 grams, which is a decent amount, but it's not as much as I've seen like other people take. And so I began to have this ego death. And what I mean by the ego death is like who you think you are, your identity, like your name, where you're from, you know, who you, like your ego, right? Like your avatar, who you think you are, like I'm John, right? That began to fall away, right? So I was no longer John from Louisiana, you know what I mean? At that point, what began to happen was all of the ego stuff starts to fall away and you just become pure consciousness. You become pure consciousness. You actually understand, you start to be able to see who you really are, which is you are the universe itself experiencing itself through this temporary like human form. And one thing that I experienced was the physical world, like the thing that you see with your eyes, this like separation that you normally have in everyday consciousness where you are you and the world is separate from you and it's different, and like you're here behind your eyes and the world is like this other thing. You know, this sense that we all have by default where it's like you are here in behind your eyes, like in your skull, looking out at a world that is separate from you, that is like a different thing than you. Like you're in here and the world is out there sort of thing. And it's like a separate thing, right? You're just this little human-like, you know, ape-like creature that's in a world on a planet, and everything that's outside of your eyes that you're looking at is something different than you. Like you're not, the world and yourself are different things. This feeling of separation began to fall away, began to dissolve. I began to realize that, wait a minute, the physical world that I see with my eyes is not separate from me. That's also me. So basically, it's like you zoom away, your consciousness zooms the fuck out, like from your ego. So you're like your higher self, but you are the world itself. And so I began to have that sense. I began to be able to tell, like, oh, wait a minute, this physical reality that I see with my eyes is also me, and it always was me. And you could kind of see that, like, this reality, this world is like kind of this simulation type of thing, where again, the physical reality is not actually real. It's like this simulation sort of thing. I'm not going to say it's like a computer simulation. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. It's almost like this like spiritual simulation type of thing. And I began to have these like hallucinations in the room where let me just describe this room to you, I guess. In this room that I was in, this guy had like multiple TVs. He had like 3 different TVs on the wall. I'm not sure why. Like one for like the Xbox, one for just like some TV show he was watching, and then the other one was like playing music or something. So one of once I was in this state of mind where I was like my higher self and I could see that the world was not real, once I was in that state, things began to change in the room, okay? He had like LED, kind of like the lighting that I have going on in the background here. He had like these LED kind of lights around the room, like around the ceiling and stuff. All of a sudden, like, colors became incredibly bright, way more vibrant than they are normally when you're in a sober state of mind. Just incredibly intense color. And so everything became more intense. Sounds become more intense. Visuals become more intense. Feelings become more intense. It's a very emotional experience. Like logic and reason kind of goes out the door. And one thing that I remember distinctly was the particular things that he was watching on the TV screens, like the different things he had going on, started to change. So I think he was like playing Minecraft or something, and he had some music playing, and then he had some like TV show on. All of a sudden, from my perspective, what was on the TV screens was completely different than what they were experiencing. It was almost like the universe was trying to tell me like how ridiculous this crap that's on the screen is. Like it was almost like I was experiencing like a parody movie or something. It was what one TV screen had like gibberish playing, the other TV screen had like some guy like saying ridiculous stuff out of his mouth, like the other screen was just like ridiculousness going on. The point is that what was on the screens for me was very clearly like ridiculousness. Very clearly the universe was like making fun of TV screens, like making fun of the shit that was on the TV. Like I don't know how else to explain it other than that. It's very hard to explain unless you've experienced something like this. But basically, I think that the experience was trying to tell me that a lot of the stuff that you see on TV screens is like ridiculous crap that people are just illusioned by. They're watching this stuff on the screen and it's programming them and they don't even realize it. But I could clearly see that. It's almost like when you're on psychedelics, you see things for what they really are instead of the illusion whenever you're like in a sober state of mind. So that was one thing. And I'll touch on the music that he was playing as well in the room. I talked a little bit about how he was playing music. So the music choice that he was playing was like music from like the 1970s, music from the 1980s, like kind of that era of music. And so me being someone who was born in 1999, that was music that I didn't grow up with. And so, like I said, everything gets more intense. Your senses are far more intensified when you're on psychedelics. And so the music was much that way. Not only was I hearing the music, I felt the music. You know what I mean? I felt every note. I felt how emotional every note was, every lyric. It was almost like I could feel just deeply in my soul how much of an art it was, if that makes sense. And not only that, but I was having these like hallucinations, if you want to call them that, or I had this connection with source consciousness or with the spiritual realm, where it was showing me like all of my ancestors from like 5,000 years ago to like 1,000 years ago to like 500 years ago, all the way up to like now. It was like showing my family tree, like how far back my family tree goes. And I had this sense that I was just one small part of this entire like ancestral line or whatever, if you guys understand what I mean by that. It was basically showing me like where I come from, like where my ancestors are from, you know what I mean? The history and the culture of my ancestry and my ancestral line, and you know, who my ancestors were, and how I'm just like the latest version of my ancestral line, if that makes sense. So there was this with the music that was playing, I felt the music, but I also, along with the music, the trip was like syncing it up with hallucinations of my ancestry and my ancestral line and my place, my family's place in this humanity world, in this kind of world. So that was deeply profound and very, very beautiful experience. Absolutely incredible. I don't really, it's very hard to kind of explain unless you've experienced it yourself. But if you guys have ever, you know, had a psychedelic experience, you probably kind of have a decent idea of what I'm talking about. And so, yeah, the music was absolutely unbelievable and very deep and profound, and just like very much so like knowledgeable, and gave me lots of wisdom about who I was and who my family was and who my ancestors were and stuff like that. Later on in the trip, we had like ordered pizza or something, and it was night. By the way, it was nighttime when I did this. I forgot to say this. I did this at night. I probably should have done it during the day, and probably should have done it outside, but it was my first time doing it. I wanted to be as safe as possible. So we ordered pizza later that night, and I remember when the pizza guy showed up, we all like ran downstairs or whatever. And when he opened the door, right? When he opened the door to the outside world to kind of receive this pizza from the pizza guy, I remember the sound that the door made, like whenever he opened it. It was almost like you were in this movie. It was like a movie trailer. It was like, you know what I mean? Like the night, you opened the door into like the night, and it was a totally different world. It was like what was happening outside was extremely a different world compared to inside of the house, if that makes sense. So it's like, it's like if you guys have ever seen Stranger Things, like the Upside Down, it was kind of like that, but the outside world was the upside down, and the inside of the house was just like regular. And so he opens the door. I hear this like cinematic movie trailer, like bass drop thing, like, you know what I mean? And I see the outside world, and I see this pizza guy walking up, and it didn't seem real at all. Like the pizza guy seemed like he was like a character in a game or something. Like I felt like I was in some video game simulation, and like this pizza guy was like a walking stereotype or something, like a walking caricature. He walked up with the pizzas and like had the pizza hat on and all this kind of stuff, and it was like so absurd and so just like, I don't know how to explain it, just so ridiculous. Like everything is ridiculous on psychedelics. You just realize the absurdity of the world and how stupid everything is, and how much like how not serious everything is. And I very much so got that sense whenever we got the pizza from the pizza guy. And then when the pizza guy left, I wanted to experience what it was like to be outside. So I was barefooted. I was barefoot, and I ran outside, like out into this apartment complex. And when I walked outside, it was like I was in the Upside Down from Stranger Things. Again, I heard this like weird like zzz sort of like sound. And when you walked outside, like I could see all the stars in the sky. Like I felt like I was just one with the universe, and it was just like, holy shit. Like you would look outside and you'd see like radio tower. I would see like a radio tower, and it wasn't this like, oh yeah, that's just a radio tower. Like no, it was like an emotional experience. I looked at this like structure that human beings built, and it was just the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life. Like a radio tower. Holy crap, you know? And it was weird. It was like, when I looked at the top of the radio tower, you would see like this blinking green light from it that you often see at night. But it was weird. I felt like I could sense something was looking back at me from the top of the tower, but it was me, if that makes sense. Like I was on the ground running around like a madman, like experiencing the night atmosphere in this outside in this apartment complex, like parking lot. But it was the most amazing fucking, like, just the most cinematic, the most incredible experience ever. and back to the radio tower thing. I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing my thought here, but losing my train of thought. But I had this sense that I was standing on top of the radio tower looking down at me, who was like looking back up at the radio tower, if that makes sense. It was like I was two places at once. I was both simultaneously in space, like with the stars, and I was on top of the radio tower looking down at me, my avatar body, who is both now looking back up into the radio tower and into the stars. And it was like you had this sense of oneness with everything, like you were just nature itself, if that makes sense. Like I wasn't in my ego space at all. And it was just, it really showed you who you really were, you know, and the trip went on and it was incredible. And the universe kind of gives you these like insane, like crazy, just wisdom. Like it gives you these advice, or it gives you like these little hints of wisdom. And when you're on psychedelics, you feel like you know everything. Like you feel like the veil of reality has just been completely pulled from your eyes, and you feel like you are the smartest, most genius fucking human being in the entire planet in the world. You feel like you literally know all the secrets to the universe. You feel like you know this profound, deep knowledge about like, oh, this is fake, that's real, what's really real, who are you really, like, oh, you know, this petty stuff in the world that everyone's so worried about. It's the most petty stuff in the world. Like you shouldn't even be worrying about stuff like that. There's so many things in the universe that are bigger than you and bigger than us, and we're all a part of this thing. We're all a part of this reality in this universe that's so vast and so just so much more amazing and beautiful than like the mundane sort of physical reality that we kind of experience, like going to work and paying bills and you know, going to get groceries and running errands and like all this type of stuff. It was so much more intense, and it showed you the beauty of what this reality really is, in other words. And what I remember, one thing that I guess the universe, like or God, whatever, told me during the trip, when I was younger, I used to worry about like dating a lot. Like, oh my God, am I ever gonna find a wife? You know, I used to worry about like, oh, am I ever gonna get a girlfriend? Like all this sort of stuff. And I used to be like jealous of people that would be in relationships and things like that. And how are they in a relationship and not me? I used to worry a lot about stuff like that when I was younger. And on that trip, it was like telling me, that is, you do not need to worry about anything like that. That is the least of your worries. Like, it's so ridiculous. I mean, it's just such a petty thing to worry about. Like, the universe is going to do what the universe is going to do. You don't have to control anything. One of the big things like that it told me, I forgot to touch on this earlier during the come up, but one thing during the come up is the trip kind of tells you like, let go of control. You know what I mean? You don't have to control anything. God is in control, or the universe is in control. This higher power, this spiritual world that is outside of this reality, that's what's in control. All you have to do is kind of sit back and just let life unfold. You know what I mean? So it gave you this sense of comfort. It was just like you felt like you had some kind of guardian angel or some just spiritual guide just that was overseeing your life, and you didn't really have to worry about anything. Like, it was so comforting and just so like relieving. You know what I mean? You don't have to control anything. Just let go of control. The universe is going to take care of everything. And so that was very, very revealing and very comforting. And another thing that happened during the trip for me was when you first leave your ego, when you first get out of your ego, you enter like the global consciousness or whatever, you feel how evil the world is. Like, it revealed to me like how this realm is incredibly evil, and there is so much suffering going on in this world. Like, you can't even fathom it. The amount of suffering that people are going through, you basically feel the weight of like humanity's suffering as a whole. It reveals how evil this world is. And it also revealed to me that I don't know how I knew this. You don't know how the psychedelic is like communicating with you, but you feel like something is communicating with you, like that's from outside of this world, that has like profound wisdom and knowledge that you can't access normally. It told me that there was like a group of people, like a cabal of people that control this world. You know what I mean? That they're at the top of the power hierarchy. Like you call it the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it. But there are these group of people that are controlling this world and are like keeping everyone suffering and keeping everyone from like keeping everyone living inside of like some illusion, like the soul trap. You guys have heard of the phrase the soul trap. Anyone who has lived life and never experienced a psychedelic experience before or had like an ego death is in like a soul trap. This reality is kind of a trap for your soul. And so, I had this sense and I had this understanding that there was a group of people that were controlling everything and stuff and were very evil. And I could feel that. I could just feel that. And I also felt the love for humanity. Like everyone else, all of us, all these average people, all of us, the average people of the world, how much love I had for just the average person. And it also told me that, like, again, I kind of talked about this, but you feel the immense suffering of humanity. And I felt that deeply. And it was very emotional. And I could just feel like, wow, this is a very evil, sad, miserable world that we live in. And I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but after that, after the come up, I kind of already told you guys a little bit of what else happened. And there was just this sense of like love. Everything was love. And I know that's kind of cliche, but I just had so much love for humanity and the world and myself and everyone. There was no self-hatred at all. There was no anxiety. There was no worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, or there was no worrying at all. It was like just everything was going to be okay. You have that sense and that loving. You feel like this godly love, and you feel connected with everything. I felt connected with nature. And I guess I'll talk about kind of the come down. During the come down, it's a very calming experience. You're coming back to reality. You're coming back into your ego and that sort of thing. And I remember his apartment has like an upstairs, and he had a balcony, and I was standing on the balcony, kind of leaning over by myself, and there was like this tree that was right next to me, and the tree was like breathing with me, like I was breathing, right? And the tree and nature and like the grass and everything, it was breathing with me. It was like almost this. If you guys have ever seen the movie Avatar, like when they're all like worshiping the tree of life or whatever, it was kind of like that, but it was like a much smaller tree, and it was just me and the tree. It was like a very personal moment. It was breathing very slowly with me, and everything was calm, and I was one with everything. And you just kind of feel like you're one with the world, you're one with everything. You understand what people mean when they say that you are the universe. Like you can hear that phrase and understand it intellectually, but until you really experience it, you really don't know what that's like, and you actually have that experience on psychedelic mushrooms. And so, once the come down happened, I kind of came back into my ego, and it was all over, and I was back who I was, and everything was totally back to normal. And at that point, I knew that I would be changed as a person for the better. You know what I mean? Not for the worse, for the better. I was completely changed forever as an individual after that. I felt like psychedelics like woke me up in this reality. I was no longer asleep. I was now awakened to the truth and to the reality of the world. And I knew that I would be a changed person forever after that night. And at that point, it was like maybe midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and I left, and I drove home. And I just remember thinking on my drive home that night, like, wow, you know what I mean? That was the best experience of my entire life. That was completely life-changing. That was something that I will cherish forever. I have no interest in doing it again, because that one experience like really did it for me, and kind of got me the experience that I was looking for and the spiritual yearning that I was looking for. And I knew at that point, yes, there was a God. Yes, there is a heaven. Yes, there is a spiritual reality that's outside of this reality, and that's more real than this. Like, another thing I'll say is, when you're on psychedelics, when you're experiencing like the spiritual realm, because that's kind of what it does, it pulls the veil down of reality, and you see the truth of the spiritual world. The spiritual world feels more real than this, than this right here, than like a sober reality. It doesn't feel like some fantasy world. It feels like that's the real world. You know what I mean? The spiritual world, that's the real world. And this reality that we're in, that's what's fake. You know what I'm saying? Like, God and spirituality and the spiritual realm, that's what's real. That's the truth. It felt more real than real. And so, yeah, that night I knew that I was changed forever. I knew that I would go on to fulfill my purpose in life and do what I was going to do. And I could totally let go of control and not worry and not be anxious anymore and all that kind of stuff. Guys, psychedelics will change your life. If you're someone who, again, I'm not advocating for drug use on the channel, but if you're someone who is kind of curious about psychedelics, or you're curious about having like a trip or having like a psychedelic experience, I'll just say you have free will. I can't control your decision, but if you decide that you want to do something like that, just understand it will be a very intense experience and it will very likely change your life. So anyways, guys, yeah, that's my experience with psilocybin psychedelic magic mushrooms. So that was what I experienced, guys. So that's the video. Thank you guys for watching. My name's John. If you guys like this sort of thing, be sure to leave a comment, leave a like, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you guys in the next one.